You build a checkout that lets a customer pay by charging the purchase straight to their phone bill instead of a card. You wire it up, and then you go to test it. You open your emulator, and the option is not there. You try from a laptop, and the option is not there. You sideload a build onto a borrowed handset on the wrong network, and it is still not there. So you shrug, assume it works, and ship the whole payment path blind. Today I want to explain why carrier billing simply cannot be tested without a real phone on a real carrier, and why that one payment option quietly loses more customers than almost anything else in your funnel. I run more than 100 real cloud Android phones in Singapore, genuine Samsung handsets, each on its own persistent Singapore mobile IP and its own real carrier SIM, reachable over an ADB endpoint with an API to list and lock any phone in the fleet. So here is the verdict up front. Carrier billing is decided entirely by the SIM in the phone and the carrier network behind it, so there is nothing on an emulator, a laptop, or a data center address for that flow to even attach to. You need a real phone on the real carrier, and if your customers are in Singapore, that means a real Singapore SIM. Let me explain what carrier billing actually is first. Direct carrier billing is the payment option that lets someone buy an app, a subscription, or an in-app item by charging it to their mobile account rather than a credit card. The amount lands on their monthly phone bill if they are postpaid, or comes straight out of their prepaid balance if they are not. For a very large slice of buyers, especially younger customers and anyone without a card, this is not a backup payment method. It is the only one they will ever use. So if that path is broken, you do not see an error in a dashboard. You just see those customers reach the payment screen and vanish. The reason it cannot live on an emulator is the same reason it is trusted in the first place. Before the store even offers carrier billing as a choice, it checks the device for a real SIM, reads the number and the home network of that SIM, and matches it against a carrier that actually supports the feature. An emulator has no telephony stack, no SIM, and no carrier standing behind it, so it fails that very first check silently. The option is simply not drawn on the screen. You are not seeing a bug, you are seeing the feature correctly refuse to appear for a device that has no carrier at all. A laptop pretending to be a phone runs into the same wall from a different angle. You can fake a screen size and a user agent, but you cannot fake being attached to Singtel or StarHub or M1 because the carrier is on the other end of that check, not on yours. Point the request through a data center address or a consumer VPN, and there is no mobile network under it, so the carrier has nothing to bill and nothing to confirm against. The whole design of carrier billing is that the money rides on a relationship between a real SIM and a real network, and that is exactly the thing none of the shortcuts can produce. So what is it you are actually trying to verify? Start with the most basic question, whether the option even appears. Carrier billing support varies by carrier, by country, by account type, and sometimes by the specific plan. So the only way to know a Singtel postpaid customer in Singapore is offered the choice is to open your checkout on a real Singtel postpaid phone in Singapore and look. The option showing up at all is the first thing you are testing, and it is a thing no preview tool or emulator can ever answer for you. Then you have to walk the whole purchase because the option appearing is only the opening move. The customer taps carrier billing. The carrier throws up a confirmation step, often a one-time code by SMS or an inflow approval, and only then does the charge go through and a success screen come back. Every one of those stages can break on its own. The confirm dialog can fail to load, the code can never arrive, the success screen can hang while the charge silently completes anyway. You find all of that by doing the actual purchase on a real device, watching each screen land and confirming the charge shows up where it should. And where it shows up is not one behavior, it is two. A postpaid customer sees a line item added to a bill they pay at the end of the month, while a prepaid customer watches the amount come straight out of a balance they topped up in advance. Those are different flows with different edge cases. The prepaid path has to handle a balance that is too low, a top-up in the middle of a purchase, and a running balance that must read correctly afterwards. You cannot assume the postpaid test covers the prepaid one, so a real fleet needs both kinds of SIM to prove both kinds of customer are handled. The edges are where the real money hides. What happens when the balance is short by $1? What happens when the customer has hit a monthly spending cap the carrier quietly enforces? What happens when a charge needs to be refunded and whether that refund flows back to the bill or the balance the way the customer expects, what the receipt actually says, and whether your own records line up with the carrier's. None of that renders on a machine with no carrier, and all of it is the difference between a payment method your customers trust and one that generates angry messages you cannot reproduce. It matters that real customers are spread across every carrier, not sitting on one. Some are on Singtel, some on StarHub, some on M1, some on a smaller network, some prepaid, and some postpaid. Each carrier implements billing a little differently, offers it on different plans, and presents its confirmation step in its own way. So a genuine test is not one phone, it is a small matrix, a couple of carriers crossed with prepaid and postpaid, showing you the real spread your customers live in. That matrix is precisely the thing an emulator erases, because it has no carrier to vary in the first place. Now, one purchase on one phone tells you about one moment. Billing integrations drift, carriers change their rules, a plan that supported the option last quarter stops supporting it this one, and the release of your own app can break the flow without anyone noticing. This is where a fleet earns its keep, a row of real Singapore phones, each on its own carrier and its own account type, lets you run the same purchase again and again over time, and catch the day the option silently disappears, instead of hearing about it from a customer who could not pay. And the identity staying put is part of why the readings are worth anything. Each phone keeps the same device, the same real number, and the same persistent Singapore mobile IP, so a test you run today lines up against the one you ran last month on the same handset. A vantage point that changes its network every hour gives you results you cannot compare, and a carrier is far more likely to treat a stable, ordinary-looking line the way it treats a real customer. A steady phone on a steady local network behaves like the customer you are actually trying to test for. People always ask whether all of this has to be done by hand, and the honest answer is mostly not. Because a real cloud phone is reachable over AdB, you can script the walkthrough, drive the app to the payment screen, capture each stage of the flow, and log what happened across the whole fleet on a schedule. You can have 10 phones on different carriers, each attempt a small test purchase in the morning, and drop a folder of screenshots for review. The confirmation step and any real charge still need care, but the repetitive checking runs like any other automated job. I want to be very clear about the boundary here, because payment testing sits right next to things it must never become. This is for testing your own checkout, your own app, your own billing integration, on accounts you legitimately control, with charges you are prepared to pay and reconcile. It is a way for an honest developer to see the payment path a real customer sees. It is not a way to fake purchases, launder charges through someone else's number, or abuse a carrier's billing relationship, and a real device does not make any of that acceptable. The value is that you finally see the truth of your own flow, so keep it to your own flow. And let me be fair about the limits, because a real phone does not make this free or effortless. Every test purchase is a real charge that costs real money and has to be refunded or accounted for. So you test deliberately, not in a loop. You are always sampling a slice of carriers and plans, never every combination that exists. And there is a little more latency reaching a phone in a rack than one in your hand. What a real device removes is the one thing you cannot fake your way past, which is being a genuine SIM on a genuine carrier. The judgment about what the flow should do is still yours. The reason teams do not just keep a drawer of phones on local SIMs for this is that a real device lab is an actual job. Every carrier you want to cover needs its own SIM that costs money every month. Prepaid lines need topping up. Every handset needs charging without cooking the battery, needs updates, and needs to be reachable from wherever your payments team happens to sit. Do that for 2 carriers, and it is a weekend of cables and admin. Do it across 4 networks in both prepaid and postpaid, kept alive so you can test on any release day, and it is a full-time role that has nothing to do with the app you are trying to ship. That is the whole reason cloudf.one exists. Real Samsung handsets in Singapore on dedicated hardware, each with its own persistent Singapore mobile IP on a real carrier SIM, Singtel, StarHub, M1, or Vivify across prepaid and postpaid lines. Not an emulator, not a data center address, not a laptop wearing a Singapore label, a genuine phone that can actually be billed by a carrier because it is genuinely on one. You reach each one over an ADB endpoint, list and lock it through an API, and watch the screen live in your browser. Start at cloud.one and use code YT30 on your first month. So to recap, area billing is decided by the SIM and the network behind it, so an emulator or a laptop can never even reach the first screen of the flow. A real Singapore phone on a real carrier lets you verify that the option appears, that the confirm step and the one-time code work, that prepaid and postpaid both behave, and that caps, low balances, and refunds all render the way a real customer will experience them. A payment path only tells you the truth from a real phone on a real carrier, so test it there. Charge yourself the few dollars it costs, and fix the break before your customers find it. I'll see you in the next one.